You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 6th of February. This town ain't big enough for the two of us. Fears over new generation of brat pack police chiefs. Gang of thieves stole 6 miles of copper wiring. Swedish minister, immigrant volumes are too high. In Italy, 1,000 firms closed each day in 2012. Germans plead for help from Berlin on Romanian influx. Gun laws didn't stop pothead killer. Islamists chase nuns from Libya and people pray for their return. Thought for the day, we are quite mad. And finally, that was a salute, that was. UK news. This town ain't big enough for the both of us. The Daily Mail reports that petulant schoolboy, the Baron John Prescott, is at war with his arch nemesis, Baron Peter Mandelson, once again. Lord Prescott has written to Hull Council after the council in his hometown bestowed the honour of High Steward upon Lord Mandelson. The slight on Lord Prescott by the council was deepened by council leaders saying it was a strategic choice in honouring Lord Mandelson as someone influential who could attract investment to the city. Lord Prescott was so upset he was not considered that he penned a strongly worded letter to the council shortly after the announcement. The Daily Mail reported that several individuals at the council had a polite chuckle after reading Lord Prescott's letter. Facebook fears a schoolgirl 12 before she was abducted by 2 men. 2 men have been arrested on suspicion of abduction after a 12-year-old girl who had complained of being stalked went missing from her home. Jerry Goddard vanished at 10 p.m. last night and her family raised the alarm when she failed to return to her home in Farnhope, Herefordshire. After an extensive search, police found her at a house in Hereford and arrested 2 19-year-old men in connection with the incident. Just days before she vanished, Kerry posted on Facebook that she was scared and was being followed. She told 217 friends, Sunday got into town for a while, got followed, stalked, Monday got stalked again, Tuesday stalked, at school, I'm effing scared. The men have remained unnamed. Fears over new generation of brat pack police chiefs after government scraps rules forcing recruits to serve as beat Bobby. New police recruits will not have to serve as a Bobby on the beat for the first time in Britain, as the rule forcing them to join as a PC was scrapped today. The brightest and best will instead enter at superintendent level as part of an overhaul of recruitment rules unveiled by Policing Minister Damian Green. It's raised concerns Britain's forces will produce a generation of senior officers who haven't felt the collar of a criminal and lead to risks to the public, the president of the Police Superintendents Association, Derek Barnett, has said. This brat pack of talented police officers could also become chief constables by the time they are 30 under the new government plans. Foreigners can also join the British police force for the first time, while experienced individuals from other industries like politics, business and the armed forces can be given senior jobs. Changes would also allow individuals like American super cop Bill Bratton, who tackled gang crime and reformed policing in New York and Los Angeles, to run the Metropolitan Police. Gang of thieves stole 6 miles of copper wiring worth £700,000, bringing down telephone services and hitting the rail network. A gang of thieves stole nearly 6 miles of copper cables, causing more than £700,000 of damage, a court heard. Christopher Cruz, 33, and his crew ripped the wiring from train tracks and telephone lines during a 4-month crime spree across London, Herefordshire, Essex, Leicestershire and Buckinghamshire in 2011. 5 members of the gang, consisting of 6 men from Basildon in Essex, were today sentenced to 12 years in jail. The gang carried out their nighttime raids between May the 1st and August the 30th, 2011, stealing 6 miles of cable weighing £31,654 from Network Rail alone. European news. Swedish minister says immigrant volumes are too high. Sweden's immigration minister has told a newspaper that Sweden needs to tighten rules for asylum seekers and other would-be immigrants to reduce the number of people coming into the country. Today Sweden is one of the countries that receives the most immigrants in the EU. That's not sustainable, Tobias Billström told the Saturday edition of the Dagens Nyheter newspaper. The minister's moderate party, a conservative group and the largest member of Sweden's centre-right coalition government, has tasked Billström with looking at ways to lower the volumes of immigrants entering the Scandinavian country, he said. The party wants the country's immigration policy to remain humane, he added. Some of those applying for residency are covered by Sweden's maintenance requirement, which says applicants must be able to support themselves and have a home to be eligible. But Billström claimed the policy only covered 1% of those applying for visas on family reunification grounds. Today people are coming to households where the only income is support from the municipality. Is that reasonable, he said. The anti-immigrant Swedish Democrat said in a statement it welcomed Billström's awakening. One thing is clear, the Sweden Democrats are influencing the debate in the right direction, it said. The Sweden Democrats entered Parliament in 2010 after winning 5.7% of the vote, and polls currently put its support at just under 10%. The number of residence permits issued by Sweden rose to an all-time high last year, with refugees accounting for most of the 19% rise. In total, Sweden received just under 44,000 asylum applications in 2012. Only 2 European countries received more, France 60,000 and Germany 64,000, according to the Swedish Migration Board. The number of Syrians seeking asylum rose 12-fold, and the agency said in December it was expecting to receive up to 18,000 Syrians this year. A WorldDate report has stated, these figures are the legal figures, but in the UK and probably other European countries, they're losing track of the thousands of illegals who are never caught and who carry on their lives much like they did in their own countries, breeding, stealing, selling drugs and killing. In Italy, 1,000 firms closed each day in 2012. Union Camerieri report says 364,972 businesses shut down in 2012. That is, 1,000 businesses closed each day in recession-hit Italy last year. Union Camerieri said it was the 4th time in the last 6 years that the business closure rate reached 1,000 firms per day after 2007, 2008 and 2009. It added that the number of new companies to launch was 383,883 in 2012, the lowest level for 8 years, and 7,427 down on 2011. This still meant that there were more companies opening than closing, but net difference of 18,911 was the second lowest since 2005. German cities plead for help as Romanian and Bulgarian immigrants threaten social peace. Dateline, Bulgaria. Sofia news agency reports German cities have warned that an influx of Romanian and Bulgarian economic migrants will cost them dear and put the social peace at risk. A report by the German Association of Cities, cited by the UK's Daily Telegraph and Daily Mail, recounts problems that they are now encountering. Dortmund, Hanover, Duisburg, Berlin and Hamburg are all struggling to cope. Chaos in classrooms with native children being held back, report claims. Roma families with 10 children receiving payments for each from the state. Reports of Romanian crime gangs sending children and women out to steal. Berlin, Hamburg, Dortmund and Hanover have seen a 6-fold increase in economic migration from the two countries since 2006, which, they say, has left them struggling to cope. It calls on Chancellor Angela Merkel to provide financial assistance to help them deal with the strain under which the migration is putting them. The social balance and social peace is extremely endangered, the report says, as cited by the Daily Telegraph and Daily Mail. The warning comes amid fears in Britain that tens of thousands more Romanians and Bulgarians will come here each year after formal restrictions on the numbers of low-skilled workers from the two countries end next year. The Daily Mail reports that Westminster City Council is already spending thousands buying return tickets for Romanian rough sleepers when they arrive at Victoria Coach Station, and it has warned that more arrivals will put greater pressure on already overstretched schools and housing services in the UK. From January the 1st, almost 30 million Romanians and Bulgarians will be entitled to live and work freely in the UK. Ministers won't put an estimate on how many will travel here, but the campaign group Migration Watch says it could be as many as 70,000 a year, they think. Officially there are 42,000 Bulgarians in the UK, but unofficially it could be up to 80,000. There are also thought to be 93,000 Romanians already here. In the UK, in Boston, Lincolnshire, the town that's had enough, they've stopped mincing their words. Even the social workers and the worthiest public sector grandees have given up dancing around one of the greatest taboos of our age and realise that it needs to be addressed head on. In Boston there's little talk of multiculturalism. Instead, everyone in this handsome old market town simply talks about immigration, none more so, it seems, than the immigrants themselves. For as Britain prepares to open up the workplace and the welfare state to the people of Bulgaria and Romania at the start of next year, none will feel the impact more than all the recent arrivals from Poland, Latvia and Lithuania, who have made Boston the most Eastern European town in Britain. Zdonis Barbaks, leader of Boston's substantial Latvian community, points out the Romanians and Bulgarians will just repeat what happened before. The unemployment agencies and gang masters will start hiring them at lower cost instead of the Polish and Latvians and Lithuanians. Then what? Pot and kettle does spring to mind. World news. Gun laws didn't stop pothead killer. The Liberals continue to pretend that gun control laws will stop gun violence, even while providing the fuel in the form of potent marijuana which can spark violence and murder. A case in point is a Florida teenage gunman, Benjamin Bishop, the subject of a Tampa Bay Times article on how he became a zombie killer through the use of pot that caused him to fear ghosts speaking foreign languages. The killings occurred in October. President Obama, a former pot smoker himself, proposes new gun control measures while ignoring the harm caused by marijuana. He recently told ABC News that he won't authorise federal prosecution of marijuana offenders in Colorado and Washington, where the drug was legalised. Obama was a member of what his biographer David Marinis called the Choom Gang, a group of heavy marijuana users who practised total absorption of the drug by inhaling the smoke fully into the lungs. Although it's long been known that marijuana adversely affects memory, intelligence and learning, the connection of the drug to mental illness, violence and murder is not widely reported by the media. However, John Patrick Bedell, who shot and wounded 2 guards at the Pentagon in March 2010, was a psychotic pothead who actually had a medical marijuana card in California. Islamists chase nuns from Libya and the people pray for their return. There is a growing presence of Islamic extremists in Cyrenaica. Sister Celeste Biaslow, former superior of the convent of the Holy Family of Spoleto in Derna, speaks of a widespread climate of fear which affects the Libyan people. The monastery was closed in October because of threats from a group of extremists. The people of Derna miss us and often contact us imploring us to return. Islamist extremists threatened us to leave, not the Libyan people, who instead protected us by coming to visit every day until our departure, said Sister Celeste Barcelo, former superior of the convent, told Asia News. In October she was forced to leave Libya with 4 other sisters because of the spread of Islamic extremists in Cyrenaica. Martinelli, apostolic vicar of Tripoli, who recently pointed out that 2 other religious communities will leave Cyrenaica after having been threatened by Islamists. The Franciscan Sisters of the Infant Jesus of Barch and the Ursuline Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus of Baida. Sister Celeste Biasolo describes a climate of fear in Cyrenaica which is especially affecting the Libyan people. The same Muslim population is being terrorised by this situation. At Christmas more than 100 families called to our monastery in Spoleto with greetings for us. In Cyrenaica, she explains, the Islamists do not want to attack the church as such, but the West, and unfortunately we are seen as foreigners. This is because the country is without a government and cannot even guarantee the security of its own citizens. Thought for the day: we are quite bonkers. I've come to the conclusion that apart from family, friends and party members aside, and even including some of them, we are actually all raving bonkers in the UK. The great British public, it must be said, are doing the extremists' jobs for them, and although it's not their fault, but the result of countless years of indoctrination, which has had every bit about as an effect as that of Nazi propaganda, we are all helping change the culture and religion of this once great nation. It's as if we are a great swathe of lemmings heading for the cliffs and throwing ourselves over. And the sad fact is the ones who do not want to throw themselves into the sea are considered the loony ones, the racist ones, the hateful, bigoted ones, and the ones the new society would rather do without. Namely the ones who have the brain to see what's happening in this country and Europe and who happen not to like it one jot. Now any time anything from saga crops up I throw it away. It's a sign I'm getting older and it's a sign I can well do without. But here's a real lambaster of nonsense. Saga are shutting down their Facebook page because of what? Racist and non-PC remarks that could hurt feelings. In fact, this site is a social website considered to be a lifeline for elderly people who live at home on their own and find comfort in talking to others over the internet, and it's being forced to close down because the group cannot afford to police offensive comments. This comes after many users have complained of being blocked from posting on Saga Zone after trying to speak up for others. Now we all know in the British National Party that speaking up for others is not considered good in this culture today, especially when those others are the white indigenous over 50s or indeed just about anyone who's not an ethnic minority. Well, why should anyone speak for them? They have a whole government to speak for them who do not speak for their own people at all, whether on Facebook, Twitter or indeed in Parliament. As to not being able to afford a moderator, get some people to volunteer to do it. If they're over 50, they might need another something to keep them busy, and this saga, which is run by a lady of Jewish extraction, Ross Altman, who I'm sure has been watching the pennies grow. They do cruises, holidays, insurance and you name it for the Silver Brigade and they do it. So how come no money for a moderator? It's all piffle. The main reason it's being shut down are that many silver foxes and vixens have views that do not tally with Miss Altman and the powers behind Saga. They are those of the Middle East, the Arab Spring and Zionism. Yesterday, Saga Zone released a statement on its website claiming it would shut down the site as of February 26th after its users were posting controversial and offensive content. Paul Green, Jewish, a spokesman for the company, explained, "There were some particularly vicious exchanges recently about the Middle East and some people were banned after accusations of making anti-Semitic or anti-Arab comments." You bet there were, Paul, old pal. I bet we had the double hate standard coming out, the duplicity of the English, bless them, up against the strong Jewish capitalism. Now, as my listeners must know by now, I sit apart from these arguments, but others do not, and I bet Saga pages were burning from certain views on Palestine, the Muslim-led jihadist Arab Spring, or rather nuclear winter as I call it, US oil pipelines and much more. Now, to most of the Silver Brigade, there is a difference between Jewish capitalism and the globalisation and the Zionist cause in Israel. As we know from Muslims, not all are raging fanatics, but are split into sectarian warfare internally anyway. But as we all know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, or something much like it. Despite all the goings on with the global Zionist-run banksters and globalisation, Israel itself is broke, much like Europe. The only religion prospering nowadays is the Muslim religion, and the only race prospering are the Chinese. And both these peoples will do anything to do just that. Obviously there have been some offside comments on the Saga website, but it is between a certain section of people who should be allowed, on a fairly private site, to do what they want. It's not down to any authority to shut it down with no real reason, other than they do not like what they read. One of the inputters to the site said she thought they'd been hacked by trolls, and this could be true. There is a breed of idiot who spends all day trolling and they really should have something more in their lives. An insider to the Saga said, "The site is a lifeline for vulnerable people who are homebound and living on their own. The majority are a good group of people, but a minority cause concern with offensive and potentially illegal racist or homophobic comments. We even discovered what I believe are called trolls with multiple online personalities, because messages were coming from the same computer, sometimes with names from both sexes. An online free-for-all might be alright for other social networks such as Twitter, but expectations are different when there is a Saga logo in the top right-hand corner." What I say to Saga, Altman and Green is grow up and let people who have paid for the privilege of living their 70 years and 10 have the privilege of saying what they feel and get a volunteer moderator to keep the trolls off. It's the same old story, a vile few ruin it for many good people with views that they are entitled to. In this country we allow time to pass and things to happen that before the last war we would never have allowed. The word racist having life or death connotations being one of them. As I've said many times, the massive influx of immigrants into the UK and Europe is something unparalleled in modern history, and we're sitting back on a cushion of politically correct bullshit and Marxist ethos allowing it. No, not really allowing it, but encouraging it in public and media. If you speak to anyone in the marketplace, any ordinary man in the street, immigration will raise its head. In many cases they will be almost apologetic for their views, which they themselves deem as racist or non-PC, and it's a sorry thing to listen to. Our media, our so-called culture, our TV and our homegrown scary propaganda have all rendered the general populace frightened, but not frightened enough to really see what the general cause is or how to go about stopping the rot. We need as a nation to rethink our moral code. The English moral code, which stood us in good stead for many, many years, has become non-PC and stands against everything that our new Marxist liberal masters want. So we need to adopt a new moral code for us British-born and even the earlier immigrants, that of putting Britain first, not the inhabitants of the Third World, who, because they generally ruin their own countries, think they have the right of some sort to invade ours, and I am including the Eastern Europeans here. All of these people have their own countries, and yet are encouraged to overpopulate and ruin our small country at will. That is nothing short of colonisation, however PC or liberal you may be. Looking after poor people in their own countries is another matter of choice. I would rather give money to see a well dug or a school built than give it to so-called charities or see it go to the strongest in that country and not the neediest. The same applies here. Our children, our sick, our needy and our elderly all need money and help, and yet we squander it on Muslim clerics and their multiple wives, Africans riddled with HIV, Eastern Europeans riddled with TB and greed, when such money should remain with us, or rather mine as I would say, alias in England, for the English. Foreign moral codes being forced on the general populace do not always appear as such, as we all know. They can appear welcoming, cool and popular, the right way to think, and can make people feel so much better about themselves and their aspirations. But look carefully. If something is too good to be true, it is often just that. If you see something happening in the country you live in and your descendants will live in, do you not have the right to stop it? If we are not given the right to even think or voice our opinions, what hope is there for the future? Do we all have to become robots that just mimic what comes down to us from our masters? Is that the future you want? These people on Saga and other people have the right to express their fears for the future. They have children and grandchildren and are quite right to be worried. Our media only encourages us to be mindful of immigrants and see their side and feel pity for them. That is part of the new moral code. Well, it might come down to basics, my friends. If someone else needs a house and it's mine or his, it will be mine. If someone needs food for his family, mine or his, it will be mine. If someone needs medical help for mine or his, it will be mine. If someone wants education for his children, mine or his, it will be mine. If someone needs a job, mine or his, it will be mine. The things that will not be mine are overcrowding, disease, poverty, third world politics or religions, lack of arable land, no border controls, no pride, no hope. These will not be mine. These do not belong in England any time, anywhere or any place ever. They are not part of my moral code anymore. And finally, that was a salute, that was. A schoolboy, Ben Hayward, has been accused of making the racist hand gesture and clicking his heels while saying Heil Hitler to his unnamed teacher. Apparently Ben insisted he did not think he was being racist and was just stretching out his left arm to imitate his teacher's gesture as she attempted to keep students quiet outside the classroom before the performing arts class. But despite denying the phrase or that he clicked his heels, the officials from Mepham School in Kent handed him a 2-hour detention. Ben and his parents refused to accept the punishment and have demanded an investigation by the school, claiming the teacher was mistaken. This presenter comments, how can this Nazi salute be deemed racist? It can be deemed unsuitable or unnecessary, or even that good old-fashioned term rude, but racist? This is where that word and the thought process behind it are so dangerous for young minds. Compare this to the news item on the knife-wielding guy at the changing of the guard. They described this obviously Muslim guy as wearing a flat woolen hat traditionally worn by men in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and he was later arrested. So not a terrorist then. Which is the greater threat to the UK? A boy aping a dead dictator or a Muslim wielding a knife in front of the palace? This teacher must be in need of some serious therapy to even take notice of such a prank. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozar and I wish you all a very good night.